are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have you guys here on this Wednesday, January 31st. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about the Lions and the Texans both keeping their offensive coordinator. So I know I did talk about this with the Lions the last couple of days because it seemed like Ben Johnson was going to leave, but then it came out, of course, when I'm done recording, that the Lions are going to retain him. He's going to be back for the 2024 season, which is huge. And then you also have the Texans offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. He was another guy that was possibly going to maybe, leave and go take a head coaching job somewhere else. But he's back as well. So we'll get into that in a second. Then in the second part of the show, different topics for today. We'll talk about Lamar Jackson's comments after the playoff loss to the Chiefs. I'll give you my thoughts on that. In the third part of the show, we'll talk about the Dallas Cowboys, actually. Jerry Jones saying the Cowboys are all in for 2024. So we'll talk about what that means. And then in the final part of the show, we'll actually take a look back at Super Bowl 54 between the 49ers and the Chiefs. That was the last time they met in the Super Bowl, which is recent. It was right before the pandemic. So, we'll talk about that, how that game went. And, again, more thoughts as to what we should expect, for this Super Bowl that'll be coming up next week. So again, still got some time to fill in the gaps from now until then. We're really gonna beat this game on the head, because that's the only game that's left, and of course it's the biggest game of the year. So we will get into that to conclude the show. So let's get right into the first topic, which is discussing the Texans and the Lions keeping their offensive coordinators. So obviously, like I said, Ben Johnson, with the Lions, it looked like he was going to leave. And I heard on the telecast, Kevin Burkhardt even said he's the favorite to get the Commanders job. But he informed the Commanders and the Seahawks that he was going to stay with the Lions next year. And then when it comes to Bobby Slowick, he was again somebody else that was considered for head coaching positions. The Seahawks and the Commanders obviously are the two remaining positions left that need to be filled. And so he reportedly agreed to a new deal with the Texans, and he's getting a pay raise to go along with that. He did impress multiple NFL clubs during his head coaching interview process. Was considered for both the Seahawks and the Commanders job. Also, the Texans, they retained their quarterbacks coach, Jared Johnson, as well. So Jared Johnson, they followed DeMeco Ryans from the 49ers to Houston, and yeah, I mean they were they were key contributors to the Texans turning it around this year, because again we didn't really expect the Texans to be in the playoffs, win the division. That was not expected from this team, but that they took a major step forward, and they're a big reason for that. C.J. Stroud, of course, is going to be one of the top players when it comes to Offensive Rookie of the Year. There's him, there's Puka Nacua, but C.J. Stroud, great rookie season, over 4,000 yards passing, 23 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in 15 games. And yeah, he's going to be the franchise quarterback moving forward. The Texans averaged at 342.4 yards per game and 22.2 points per game. I mean, with that, and along with Ben Johnson, because then you look at Ben Johnson again, was another guy that was considered for both positions, like I've been saying. But apparently, from what I was reading, his asking price spooked some teams. So, we'll see. I mean, he'll probably get another opportunity. Maybe, next year, after next year, maybe he, depending on what jobs are open, he might leave. But for now, he's coming back for the 2024 season. So the Lions, they finished 4th in the league in yards and 5th in scoring, and this was actually Ben Johnson's. In his first season as offensive coordinator, they finished in 4th in yards and 5th in scoring. They ranked 3rd in the league in yards and 5th in scoring in his second season. Okay, yeah, that's what I have here. And obviously they've built a nice core there. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff. Of course, now in year 3 with the Lions. Drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, bringing in David Montgomery, Sam Laporta. Again, I've been saying what Jameson Williams can do. They have a nice core on offense, and they have a good offensive line. So, and really the important thing, the most important thing is, is that familiarity, and you want to you don't want to screw that up, because we've seen when, continuity, that's what I meant to say. Because we've seen what happens when, teams lose their coordinators. I mean, look at what happened with the Eagles. I go back to, the Falcons the year after they lost the Super Bowl and they lost Kyle Shanahan to the 49ers. The offense wasn't as good. The continuity is very important. And I think more so for C.J. Stroud, just because he's going into his second season now. You want to keep that. Obviously with Jared Goff, it's a little bit different because he's a veteran quarterback. So I think he'd be able to, and not to say that C.J. Stroud wouldn't be able to handle it. It's just, he's going into his second year. Jared Goff's been around for a while, so he's been in different systems. So he's kind of used to that. He's adapted to that. With C.J. Stroud, you don't know how it would be, but I honestly, again, I think it'd be fine. But again, there's always that other side to it. So I think this is very important for both teams, that they're running it back with their staffs for next year. Obviously, the Lions got a step further than the Texans. But again, you look at the Texans; they were, they're ahead of schedule. Because again, nobody really expected them to get to this point, and here they are. Not here they are, but you know what I mean. It's gonna, now going into next year, now the expectations are gonna be, higher, for both teams, because the Texans now, you won the division and you got to the second round of the playoffs. Yeah, the expectations are gonna be higher, and the Lions, they just made it to the NFC Championship game, so now the pressure is gonna be on. Because, for the Texans, they were more so playing with house money. The Lions, a lot of people expect, including myself, expected them to be a good team this year. Now, I didn't think they were going to make it all the way to the NFC Championship game, but now that's kind of the expectation is, you got to the NFC Championship game, you were up 24-7 against the 49ers, and you blew it. But now, next year, it's gonna be up to you to finish the job and end up going to the Super Bowl. And I think, keeping Ben Johnson is huge, so we'll see what happens. And again, I talked about Dan Campbell's press conference and what he had to say, and he was saying how he's going to take his time with if Ben Johnson ended up leaving, and he doesn't have to worry about it. Ben Johnson's coming back. So, now we'll see what happens in 2024, how these teams are. I mean, I expect both teams to be good. The Texans, obviously, both teams have some work to do. More so the Texans. But the Lions, they have to, like I said, I think they need another weapon on offense, another pass catcher. The defense definitely needs some work, particularly in the secondary. With the Texans, we talked about what they needed to do is, the front seven, they got a lot of guys that are going to be free agents. Again, they probably need weapons on offense too. The running game, I think, is something they need to address. Devin Singletary did a nice job, but they need somebody else there to go along with that. Because you thought it was going to be Dameon Pierce, but that just ended up not being the case, and he ended up just being a guy on special teams. So yeah, listen, both teams, like I said, expectations are going to be higher, and we'll see what they do here in the off season. But it's a step in the right direction, And like I said, the biggest thing, continuity. I know I said familiarity, but I meant to say continuity. That's the word I was looking for. So let me know what you guys think about this. Obviously, again, I think it's good for both teams. Because I didn't really know much about Slowick, but obviously, Ben Johnson was somebody that's been talked about a lot the last couple of years now with the Lions, surging, and it was thought to believe that he was going to get a head coaching job, and now he's like I said, apparently his asking price might have been too high for some teams, but for the Lions, I think it's good for them because you're running it back. Now we just gotta wait and see how next year goes. We're already talking about next year. But yeah, listen, it'll be here before we know it. We're talking about the Super Bowl, for the next 2 weeks. Well, now week and a half. The off season is gonna go very fast. So, and then we'll be right back here again talking about this stuff. But yeah, that's really all I have to say here. Again, good for both teams, and like I said, we'll see how it goes for next year. So, when we come back from our first break of the show, we're then going to dive into the other team that got eliminated on Championship Sunday. We'll revisit the Ravens because I did want to talk about Lamar Jackson, what he had to say after the Ravens playoff loss to the Chiefs, and really just where the Ravens kind of go from here, because it was definitely a disappointing end to their season, and I just wanted to touch upon what Lamar Jackson had to say, and yeah, that'll be the second part of the show when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're now going to talk about Lamar Jackson's comments after the playoff loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll get into that. So this is a couple things that he had to say. So this is in an article from apnews.com. So he said, "We're mad. We were 1 win away from the Super Bowl. What I've been talking about all season. My team has been talking about all season. We fell short. The offense, we didn't put nothing on the board. We scored once. That's not like us. I'm not frustrated. I'm angry because I know how hard we worked to get here." Now, I kind of feel like that's like the same thing. Now, I don't know what the exact question was that before he answered. He also said you can't turn the ball over. It's tough like that. Defense did a wonderful job, held a great offense to 17 points. We got only one touchdown. That's not like us, no excuses. So, first thing I'll say is very accountable, and that's something that I think Lamar does a great job with, is being accountable, and yeah, you look at the season that he had, and he's likely going to be the MVP. You gotta be able to answer the tough questions, especially after a playoff loss like this. And and the Ravens offense, they did not play up to what they've been playing like all season, especially because they also didn't really run the ball either, which really didn't make sense. But he's angry, but he's not frustrated. Now I feel like those are like similar meanings, but I don't know. That's just me. But for me, though, he's not going to say it, but I don't know. Don't you think this is kind of? I think this. I feel like internally he probably thinks this, but he's not going to say it. But listen. You haven't performed particularly well in the postseason. His first playoff game, you really forget about it, honestly, is when they lost to the Chargers, and that was at home. Then the following year, you're an MVP. You're the MVP, 1 seed. You lose to the Titans at home. Then, you win against the Titans the following year, but then, you lose to the Bills in Buffalo. Lamar didn't really play well in that game through a pick six. And then now you got this year where, listen, they did win 34-10 against the Texans, but that game was close. That game was tied going into the half. And then the Ravens, opened it up and they were able to, pull away and win. But again, that was a little bit of a struggle for a bit. And then now you got this game where it just, the whole game, after the Zay Flowers touchdown, first of all, they started off the game going a quick 3-and-out. And then, the Chiefs go right down the field, score a touchdown. But then the Ravens, they gambled, they went for it on 4th down. Lamar Jackson picks up a first down. They end up scoring a touchdown, a great improvisation play by Lamar Jackson, throwing the touchdown then to Zay Flowers, where you thought he was going to get sacked. But then after that, it just, the Ravens offense just stalled. It did nothing. And listen, we could talk about how they didn't run the football in this game, but the quarterback didn't play well. The quarterback did not play well. He's a part of the reason for that. And if the Ravens, listen, the Ravens need Lamar Jackson. Because we saw the last couple of seasons. They had to start Tyler Huntley in the playoff game last year against the Bengals, and then the year before that they didn't make it because Lamar got hurt. The Ravens need Lamar. I'm not saying like, they should move off him. No. Oh, they almost, well, not that they almost did, but there was talk about that, because with all the trade rumors and stuff before the year started. But anyways, the Ravens need Lamar, and Lamar is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and one of the best playmakers in the NFL. But when you get to the postseason, it's been very it's been difficult for them to, take that next step. And you thought with this team and how loaded they are on both sides of the ball, you thought this was going to be the year. And you had the 1 seed, you're at home, but you lose to that. You lose to Patrick Mahomes, And listen, that's been a lot of teams' problems. But, again, you don't know what's going to happen year to year. Injuries and teams that don't make the playoffs some teams end up making it, and you could be the odd team out. And the Ravens, they play in a tough division. Now, I think they're still looked at as the best team in the division right now. But you're going to get a healthy Joe Burrow back next year, who's going to have something to say about it. The Browns are still going to be there. The Steelers, the Steelers beat them twice this year. I know the second game was with the backups, but still, the Steelers give them problems. And then of course, then you got, teams in other divisions as well in that conference. It's a loaded conference, and in a year where the Chiefs weren't looked at to be the favorites, this was your year, and you still couldn't get it done. So, again, the accountability is there with Lamar, but I don't know. I feel like, it should be a little more than just, I think there's a lot of emotions because, again, this was the best team you probably had, and you still came up short. So, what are you going to do next year? Because you figure the Chiefs are going to, improve this receiving core, because that was one of the weaknesses of the team, was the weakness of the team. The defense was their strength. Travis Kelce, after having this, regular season where everyone's like, yeah, he's lost a step, he's not the same Travis Kelce. He looks like Travis Kelce now. The Chiefs are going to be there next year. They're going to be better next year. And they're, as Lamar Jackson has once said, they're his kryptonite. So, it's a problem. It's a problem that they continue to struggle with the Chiefs. And like I said, listen, they did win the previous regular season matchup against them. The most recent matchup before this game. But again, the Chiefs could have very easily won that game. The Chiefs kind of gave that game away to the Ravens. And here there was never really, every time it looked like the Ravens were going to get something going, nothing happened. Zay Flowers' big play, taunting penalty, pushes them back. Then they're about to score, and then Zay Flowers fumbles at the 1. Lamar Jackson throws the interception in the triple coverage. They just could not. And then earlier in the game too, they're driving. They were in field goal range, and then they got knocked out of field goal range. It's like there was a lot of chances for them to score points, and they just could not get it done. And it's unfortunate because again, Lamar Jackson had a good season. This was a very good team. The defense, listen, the defense showed up for the Ravens. They played unbelievable, but in the end, they fell short. They fell short. And the other thing too is of course the penalties. So yeah, they were penalized 8 times for 95 yards. That just can't happen. Just cannot happen. And people could complain about the refs and all that, but listen, at the end of the day, the Ravens beat themselves. Now, I do agree that there were some calls that maybe the ref should have threw a flag. I think there was that play with Likely that maybe that could have, one of the plays involving Likely, maybe there could have been a flag on that. But that's why people think that there's something going on because, it's like you call certain things on the Ravens. Now, again, a lot of the things with the Ravens were blatant, but there were other things too with the Chiefs where it's like, why wasn't there a flag thrown? That's the problem, is the inconsistencies with the officials. And that's why people believe the stuff that they believe. So, but yeah, there were a lot of reasons the Ravens lost this game. Lamar Jackson's a part of that, penalties, Zay Flowers fumbling. The play calling with not running the football. There's a lot of things you could point at as to why the Ravens lost this game. And, again, you give Lamar Jackson credit. He's going to own it. And, we'll see what happens next year. But again, you had this team. It's like Everything was lined up for you guys, and you guys just did not show up. And again, you look at the Texans game. Like I keep saying, the game was tied. And the only touchdown the Texans scored was a special teams touchdown, punt return. I mean, the Ravens were struggling there. And, I didn't feel great going into the game. I mean, I said, listen, I had the Ravens going to the Super Bowl. I was like, prove me wrong. And they didn't. They did not. They, again, lose to the Chiefs. And, now, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know what they can do. I mean, of course, there's always things you can improve on. The defense, you want to make sure you retain, the vast majority of the players there. I don't know what the contract situation is for a lot of the players. I'm pretty sure they extended Roquan Smith, so you don't have to worry about him. That was a great trade that the Ravens made to get him. I don't know what the contract situation is for the guys on defense, or really for anybody at the moment. I mean, obviously we'll talk about it when we get into the off season, but it's just it's unfortunate. It's really when it comes to the Ravens, because this looked like, hey, maybe this is going to be it, but that's not the case. We got the Chiefs in the Super Bowl once again. But for people saying that it has to do with other things other than the Ravens just beating themselves, it's wrong. The Ravens beat themselves, and they do have their quarterback with Lamar Jackson, but I don't know what you can do. Like, you got this team, you have a weakened Kansas City Chiefs team, and they still came in and beat you. Now, again, they were in the playoff mode, so they look like they are a different team than they were in the regular season. But you know what? Because the playoffs, it's a whole different thing. So, and that's where teams will rise up and teams will not. And the Ravens were a team that did not rise to the occasion. Again, Lamar Jackson, being accountable, that's what you want in your quarterback, but, not frustrated, but angry. Listen, it's got to start weighing on you a little bit that this keeps happening. Because again, you're going to have the people that have been complaining about Lamar Jackson's lack of playoff success. That's going to continue. So, internally, that's probably something he thinks about. But at least here, he didn't. At least he didn't mention it. At least from what I, was reading from the article. So when we come back from before we come back, we go to break. I just want to remind you guys once again. To tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So now when we come back from our second break of the show, we will talk about Jerry Jones saying that the Cowboys are all in for 2024. And what does that mean? So we'll get into that when we come back from our second break of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Jerry Jones' most recent comments, talking about the Cowboys being all in for 2024. Basically, Jerry Jones has expressed his intention to go all in for the 2024 season, talking about also the urgency given that Mike McCarthy is on his final year of his contract. Also said that free agency is also a possibility. Going after some guys that could help out the team. There's actually, we got to look at the free agents for the Cowboys, but they seem to have free agents. But yeah, so he's talking about them going all in. But listen, I mean, the first move that they decided to do was, okay, we're going to keep Mike McCarthy. Well, if he is entering his final year of his contract, then, depending on what they do, he's probably not going to come back. If the Cowboys don't take that next step, you're bringing back Mike McCarthy, so I think we kind of expect more of the same. A solid regular season, then you get to the postseason, and then nothing's going to happen. Again, like the Ravens, although the Ravens are a better team, but again, the Ravens were the best team in the conference. The Cowboys, they play in the weaker of the two conferences. They, to me, I thought were going to get to the NFC Championship game. I did, because of how well they played at home, and I just thought it was going to ultimately be them versus the 49ers. And what happened? They lost to the Packers. But not only did they lose to the Packers destroyed them. Now, again, the final score was closer than it actually was. It was 48-16 at one point. But, Jerry Jones, you're talking about going all in. You're bringing back Mike McCarthy. I mean, you're bringing back Dan Quinn, it looks like. Is that really going all in? And let's not forget, what did the Cowboys do before this season? They acquired Stephon Gilmore. They acquired Brandon Cooks, which were good moves. But, again, where did that leave? Where did that bring you? You got knocked down in the first round. You didn't even make it to the divisional round. You got knocked down in the wild card round. And this is with Dak Prescott being an MVP candidate, and Deron Bland and his Pro Bowl season that he had, and breaking the record for most pick sixes in a season. Micah Parsons, who was a stud on defense, and CeeDee Lamb with the season he had. You had all these things go great for you during the regular season. You get to the postseason, and it didn't mean anything. One and done. That was it. So listen, there's always things they can improve on. I mean, listen, you did notice throughout the season that, there were at times the Cowboys defense was vulnerable, but, they're a good scoring defense. I mean, they're opportunistic. They take advantage of teams' mistakes. They score. They score. I mean, not just Deron Bland, but, they scored defensive touchdowns. They were an opportunistic defense, but you know what? There were times this year they gave up a lot of points. Playoff game, obviously. You go back to the Thursday night game against the Seahawks too. This team does give up a lot. The Bills. I mean, look at what the Bills did to them. And James Cook. I mean, James Cook just ran all over that defense. Defense has got some holes on it. And then also you have a quarterback who, again, played well this year, but you get to the postseason and what happened? 2 interceptions, and one of them was a pick six. The other one could have possibly been a pick six, because the Packers maybe could have reviewed the. But they probably still would have ruled that he was down. But either way, you get to the postseason and Dak Prescott did not perform well. He didn't perform well in the game. I mean, you look at the stats, you're like, wow, he threw for 400 yards. Yeah, but that was at the end of the game when the game was out of reach. So, I mean, listen. Cowboy fans, you see it on social media. The only way that things are going to change is if Jerry Jones takes a back seat and lets somebody else run the team. Is that going to happen? No. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen because, listen, you got these coaching candidates out there. You got Belichick, you got Vrabel, you had Harbaugh, but you were like, nah, we're going to keep McCarthy. Okay. And you know what? I was dead wrong about Mike McCarthy. I honestly thought Mike McCarthy was a good head coach. I did. But how it's been in Dallas, he really was a product of Aaron Rodgers. Now, Mike McCarthy drafted Aaron Rodgers. Mike McCarthy helped develop Aaron Rodgers. But what has Mike McCarthy done since, he got fired from Green Bay and took over for Dallas? 1-3 in the playoffs. not good. Not good. The first season is kind of a pass because Dak Prescott obviously got hurt, and that kind of changed everything. Because he was actually going to have a good year, but then he got hurt against the Giants, the horrific ankle injury, and thankfully he was able to bounce back. But yeah, it's again one and done. Well, last year wasn't one and done, but you know what I mean. It's just they're not taking that next step. They have all this talent, and they just cannot take that next step. And Jerry Jones is talking about going all in. Well, what else can they do? I mean, obviously, yeah, the defense I think is something they can. I think the defense still needs some work. Because again, I mean, the Packers shredded them. Look at and the 49ers too. Earlier in the season, they shredded them. I mean, you're going to be getting Trayvon Diggs back next year. However you want to look at that. I know he gives up big plays too, but. Again, you want him back on that defense. That's really what I got to look at. I mean, also I guess in the running game too, because I don't know what happened with Tony Pollard. He just was not running the football as well as he did the previous season. But again, I know I said I don't know what, but it had to do I think with the injury because he got hurt in the playoff game against the 49ers last year. So I think a year removed from that. You'll see a new Tony Pollard. But also, you didn't really have another back to kind of like balance with, and that's where I think they kind of missed Zeke this year. Because at least with Zeke, you get those short yardage gains. He could be a guy that you could use at the goal line. Because, I mean, last year, Tony Pollard was one of the most explosive running backs in the league. It's just, I think it had to do with the injury. But, so I think that's an area that they can maybe improve on is the running game. But yeah, I mean, you look at the receiving core with, of course, CeeDee Lamb leading it, and then you bring in Brandon Cooks, who was a good number 2, Michael Gallup. The Cowboys always seem to have a good tight end. Jacob Ferguson, he was, he really he played well at times this year. And the offensive line. It's been good. I mean, it's obviously not the offensive line Dak started out with, but when he first got drafted. But it's his rookie season. But still a unit that provides protection. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, there's things that they can improve on, but ultimately you got to look at the head coach. You also got to look at the quarterback too. Because again, I think Dak Prescott is a solid starting quarterback, but I don't think he's somebody that's going to take you to where you want to go. I don't, and I've stood by that. I've kind of warmed up to him because I used to just think he's overrated. But I think he's become a better quarterback. Since he first came into the league, because now it became his team more so as opposed to Zeke's team. But again, even then, it's just, you're not going anywhere. You're still, in the same spot. So, and and the postseason's different. Again, you get to they have this great regular season. They get to the postseason and they play better competition and they lose. That's how it's been, in some of these years, with them. It's like, oh, man, this could be it for the Cowboys. I mean, these last couple of years, I was like, oh, yeah, the defense is kind of, because you go back to Mike McCarthy's first season, the defense was horrible. Then, now they've been playing better. They still give up a ton of yards at times. Again, we saw that this year. But, it kind of was, it was kind of, you didn't really... It's kind of masked over because, you had DeRon Bland with all his pick sixes. I mean, Micah Parsons, everything. Cowboys are winning games. But, they there were times where the defense did not play well. Now, it got exposed against the Packers because the Packers just ran the football all over them, and Jordan Love is slinging it all over the place. Wide receivers are wide open. The defense is a little bit of an issue. But I don't know. Jerry Jones just thinks, yeah, we're going all in. Well, I mean, what about this past year? You weren't going all in then? I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. Well, so far, going all in, it hasn't looked great because you brought back Mike McCarthy and you're bringing back, I guess, Dan Quinn. So, I don't know. We'll see. But, yeah. Listen, the conference is going to be better. That's the other thing. That's the other thing. Like, you lost to the Packers, who were another team that was ahead of schedule. They're going to be better next year. I mean, again, I talked about the NFC North next year as a whole is going to be better. Now, I think the Cowboys are still better than some of those teams. But, you got to deal with those teams. You figure the Eagles are going to, figure it out. Let's see how the coordinators change is going to play out for them. I mean, they'll still beat up on the Commanders and the Giants. The Giants got to, as a Giant fan, you got to prove something to me because I said the season's going to be over. The season will be dictated on what they do against Dallas week 1, and they got destroyed. So I'm like, yeah, the Giants are going to stink, and that's what happened. The Commanders, yeah, another team the Cowboys beat up on this year. So we'll see. And again, they don't have a head coach, so we got to see, what they end up doing there. You go to the NFC South. The Saints, you figure, are they going to figure it out next year? Because they were better towards the end of the season. The Bucs, obviously, we'll see what happens. They got a ton of free agents. The Falcons need a quarterback. Panthers are, we'll see. But, then you got the NFC West. Yeah, not really I mean, I still look at the Cowboys as better than all the teams in the NFC South. But then the NFC West, of course, you got the 49ers, you got the Rams. We'll see what the Seahawks do with the head coach. And then the Cardinals obviously are in rebuild mode. But still, I mean, there's a lot of teams that you're gonna have to deal with when it comes to the playoffs. Playoff football is different. I mean, I talk about the Cardinals. They lost to the Cardinals. This year. So, yeah. We'll see what Jerry Jones means by going all in. I don't really, expect much. But again, with Cowboy fans, they said the only way things are going to change is if Jerry Jones takes a step back. And he's not going to do that. So they're kind of going to be in that same, again, they're going to be going in circles. So we'll see. We'll see what they end up doing in the offseason. But so far, not off to the start I think Cowboy fans want to because they are bringing back Mike McCarthy. But again, if he ends up not getting it done in 2024, which is very likely the way things have gone so far, they're going to be looking for a new head coach. And I did see something because I've been looking at Bleacher Report a lot that, there's Jerry Jones is saying it's possible to maybe, work with Bill Belichick down the line. So when? It should be right now. You should let go of McCarthy, bring in Belichick. I mean, he's still there. It's crazy. He's still there. Mike Vrabel is still there. I'm curious to see if Vrabel ends up coaching now because I thought maybe he was going to, get a job, but no. All right, so, like I said, let me know what you guys think about this topic. Now before we go, we're going to go into our final break of the show. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 54. We'll take a look back at that, and how that game went. Because obviously this is now, the Super Bowl coming up is now a rematch of this Super Bowl. So we'll talk about that and, how that game played out and what to expect from the game next Sunday. So stick around and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, I can't believe we show flew by today. For the final part of the show, it always flies by. We'll take a look back at Super Bowl 54. And here's the other thing. So when the Packers and the 49ers played against each other, I talked about their previous playoff matchups. And then I got a comment, saying like, oh, what's the point of doing this? These are different teams. I get it, but it's just looking back on the history between the teams. So I'm doing the same thing here. I'm looking back because again, we got still, a couple days left this week, and then we got the whole week next week. So, and it's just one game to talk about. So there's things to, touch upon, and this is one of them. So obviously, again, these teams met each other, Super Bowl 54. Down in Miami, again, before the pandemic. Now, again, Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback for this game. The 49ers, they were the 1 seed. The Chiefs were actually the Chiefs were the 2 seed. Yeah, the Chiefs were the 2 seed that year, right, because we talked about the Ravens having the 1 seed earlier in the show. But, of course, they hosted the AFC Championship game. I mean, those playoffs were insane. Well, at least the 2 playoff games, the 2 comeback wins for the Chiefs. Well, 3 including this one. When the Chiefs were down 24-0 against the Texans, and then they came back and won that. The final score was 51-31, I think it was. And then they were down 10 against the Titans, and they came back and won that game. And they were down 10, in the fourth quarter against the 49ers, and they came back. They ended up winning 31-20. Yeah, I mean, the 49ers in this game, they did a good job, limiting Mahomes for the most part. But then, he took over in the fourth quarter. Because, and listen, the 49ers have a lot of the players from that Super Bowl are on this team, currently. But yeah, they did a good job. I mean, again, they had a 10-point lead. And I think Mahomes threw how many? Didn't he have 2 picks in the game? I think he had 2. Let's look at his stats for the game. So Mahomes had 2 picks. Garoppolo also had 2 picks in the game as well. Mahomes went 26 of 42, 286 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, was sacked 4 times. Damian Williams was their leading rusher, 104 yards rushing and a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes had a rushing touchdown. I think that was the first touchdown of the game for the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill was their leading receiver. He had 9 receptions for 105 yards. Sammy Watkins had 5 for 98. Travis Kelce, 6 for 43 and a touchdown. Damian Williams had 4 for 29 and a touchdown. How many sacks did Garoppolo? Oh, wow. They only sacked him 1 time? Interesting. Then on the 49ers side, Jimmy Garoppolo, he went 20 of 31. 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Raheem Mostert had 58 yards rushing on the ground and a touchdown. Coming off of that 200 rushing yard performance against the Packers just 2 weeks before that. Deebo Samuel had 3 carries for 53 yards. Their leading receiver in this game was Kendrick Bourne, 2 receptions for 42 yards. Kyle Juszczyk was their second leading receiver. He had 3 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. And then how many sacks did the Niners get? Niners got 4 sacks. Oh, yeah, I talked about that already. DeForest Buckner had a sack and a half. Jaquiski Tart had a sack. Nick Bosa had a sack. Earl Mitchell had half a sack. I'll be honest, I don't know who Earl Mitchell is. I know Elijah Mitchell, who will be playing, next Sunday, but not him. Travarius Moore and Fred Warner both had picks. Yeah, because Mahomes' second pick, it looked like it was a wrap. But, that was not the case. The Chiefs, they put together some quick scoring drives. Yeah, because you go to, so when was Mahomes' second interception? So, this came with, there's 12 minutes left. There was still time, but you thought, that wasn't good. Then the 49ers punted, and then the Chiefs went 10 plays, 83 yards. Of course, the big play was, the 44-yard pass play to Tyreek Hill, the wasp play They reposted that. I think it was yesterday. I was listening to the audio of that because he was talking to Mahomes was talking to Bieniemy. He's like, "Do we have time to run Wasp?" And they did that. And then Fred Warner was telling Jimmy Ward to play the middle of the field. Tyreek Hill is wide open. I know there was some comments saying that they missed a holding call on Nick Bosa, but and ended up not getting called. And that obviously set up the touchdown drive, the touchdown to Travis Kelce, a 1-yard touchdown. So that made it a 3-point game. Niners punted, and then the Chiefs went down the field. 7 plays, 65 yards. Was also set up by that 38-yard reception by Sammy Watkins. Damian Williams scored the touchdown from 5 yards out. They had to review it, but ball crossed the plane. And listen, the 49ers, they had a chance. Garoppolo threw that deep pass to Emmanuel Sanders, and if you just don't overthrow, you just hit him in the right spot. That maybe could have been a touchdown, but he overthrew him. And then the Chiefs scored another touchdown. That was with Damian Williams. That was a 38-yard touchdown run. And then Garoppolo threw a second pick, and that was it. And the Chiefs won the game. Again, a lot of the players from that game are playing in this game. Of course, Mahomes, Kelce, Chris Jones, Butker, just to name a few. And then, of course, on the other side, the 49ers got more players from that Super Bowl. You got Fred Warner and Greenlaw and Armstead, Bosa, Kittle, Debo. They were all there for that. Juszczyk. Am I missing anybody else? I think that's... Yeah, well, it's... Again, in total, a lot of players from that Super Bowl are going to be playing in this game. So, it's going to be interesting. But, obviously the 3rd and 15 play that Mahomes had to connecting with Tyreek Hill, that's obviously... obviously it's not as big as like the helmet catch or, some of these, some of the other plays you could think of in the Super Bowl. Well, obviously I of course think of the helmet catch just because being a Giant fan, but still it's a memorable play. And then they added the play in Madden. Now obviously the Chiefs can't run that play anymore. They could try, but it's not going to be the same because you don't have Tyreek Hill anymore. But yeah, it's crazy how that was, that was 4 years ago, and now 4 years later, these teams meet again. Obviously, Brock Purdy is now the quarterback, so it's gonna be different. It's gonna be different, and let's not forget, you also got Christian McCaffrey, who is the best running back in the NFL. And obviously what's being talked about is, the Chiefs' defense being a little vulnerable to the run, which is something that, the 49ers can maybe exploit because you got Christian McCaffrey. And I did talk about the matchup from last year. McCaffrey really didn't have a big impact, but that's just because the 49ers literally just acquired him from the Panthers, so they wanted him to obviously get acclimated. So, and McCaffrey, of course, has had a great postseason. He's a touchdown machine. It's just automatic that he's going to score a touchdown, every week. It's rare that he doesn't score a touchdown. They kept him in against Jacksonville earlier in the season. They put Darnold in. They were trying to get him to score the touchdown to keep the streak going. So, like we look at the stats from, 4 years ago. The 49ers, with McCaffrey, they're going to run the ball. They are going to. Now, the thing with them is they cannot fall behind in this game. And now I know they fell behind against the Packers, against the Lions, but against the Chiefs, I don't think you're going to be able to. I don't think you're going to be able to come back if you fall behind against them. So it's very important that the 49ers, they, control the game. Maybe they get the ball first. They go right down the field. They get a touchdown. Set the tone for this game. I don't think you're not going to rattle the Chiefs, but at least make them answer. If you go down and score. If you again, depending on who starts the game. But you're not gonna see a Wasp play. Obviously, now the Chiefs got Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire running the football, and Pacheco especially has done a great job. You still got to deal with Kelce. So, we'll see what they do. Maybe don't leave him wide open like the Ravens were doing at certain points during the game. I just don't get it. Travis Kelce is the best weapon on the field, besides Patrick Mahomes. Why is he wide open? Let somebody else beat you. I don't know. We'll see. But, for me, obviously I think they'll look at... I think the 49ers are going to look at the tape from that Super Bowl, from this Super Bowl 54. They're obviously going to look at the tape from last year, when they played. Because Mahomes shredded that defense. I mean, he threw for over 400 yards, I think, in the game when I talked about it the other day. And, again, the 49ers, your back end is not that good. Even though, again, you got to get pressure on Mahomes. If they're not able to do that, and I mean, even when saying that, Mahomes can get out of the pocket and move around, but I don't know. They got to figure out something. Now, again, they got 2 weeks to prepare, but again, Mahomes has time to throw. Now, obviously, the receivers have to catch the ball too. The receivers are dropping passes, then it doesn't matter. But the back end is a problem, and the 49ers got to get pressure. They're going to have to get pressure and get to Mahomes. I mean, the Ravens finally did late in the game, in the championship game on Sunday. Niners are going to have to do that. And they, on the telecast for the NFC Championship game, Kevin Burkhardt was saying how, the pass rush hasn't really been getting home as much. And it's really puzzling because you look at their defensive line and you're like, their front seven, how are they not getting pressure? I know people are talking about Chase Young, how he really has not. Like, there was a stat that was posted I saw on Instagram of, like, what the 49ers, have done since they acquired Chase Young. But all the comments are like, Chase Young has done nothing. And if you look at the Jahmyr Gibbs rushing touchdown, if you look at that play, people are talking about the lack of effort on that play by Chase Young. He just let Jahmyr Gibbs go right by him and score the touchdown. So, but yeah, I mean, you figure with Bosa and Armstead and Chase Young, but again, what I just talked about, that they would get home, but it just that hasn't been the case. So, we'll see. It's gonna be there's gonna a lot of pressure on. Also, you look at Brock Purdy as well because, obviously he's got people criticizing him every single week. Being carried by his team and listen. I understand it. But you know what? Brock Purdy, I'll say this, Brock Purdy could have easily folded when they were down 24-7. Now, again, a lot of things happened where they kind of were helped out, like Gibbs fumbling, but, Brock Purdy could have easily folded. And he didn't. They were down 24-7, and you know what? They came back, and, now they're playing in the Super Bowl. So, I don't think the moment is too big for him. I hope he plays well. But the thing is, he's going up against a tough defense. Like, that's the other thing, too. I mean, the Chiefs' defense from Super Bowl 54 to now, different. It's better. I mean, you still got the same coordinator. Chris Jones is still there. But it's a better defense. So, we'll see what happens. But with that, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, we'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.